Welcome to the Femininja Project. I am your host, Cheryl I Love, middle-aged ninja hiding in plain sight, dedicated to restoring human dignity one person at a time and helping you unleash your personal power. Discover that it's possible to look like a woman, act like a lady, move like a ninja, and think like a warrior. And remember, men are always welcome on the Femininja Project. Welcome to another episode of the Femininja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you. And you know, here at the Femininja Project, as you know by now, we absolutely love and celebrate the warrior spirit. And I am firmly convinced that there is a warrior in each and every single one of us just wanting to come out, and what it means to different people is just, as individual as we are ourselves. And we have a fantastic guest with us today who's going to talk about her warrior journey and her warrior spirit. Her name is Connie Jones. She is a coach, therapist, motivational speaker at Arise Counseling and Coaching. She is also the author of the book, Warrior Arise, Live Bravely, Freely, and Authentically You. Ooh, what is not to love about that? She is passionate about connecting with people's hearts while engaging the unique stories they've fulfilled in their personal and professional lives. So, Connie, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Cheryl, for having me. I'm so excited. I can already feel the warrior spirit in this show, and I am really, really excited. This is just so meant to be.
Oh, you're welcome. And it is meant to be. I mean, we met each other officially probably about 2 weeks ago, I think, and had a phone conversation, kind of like a meet and greet. And an hour and a half later, we were still talking.
And could have talked the rest of the afternoon. There's no doubt. We were
no doubt.
From the get-go. No kidding.
There's nothing like the power of two warriors, and again, we all have a warrior spirit, and we all have a way of finding that inner warrior and expressing it. So tell us your story.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I definitely early on, didn't know anything about the warrior spirit or anything about warrior, anything. I felt really lost in my life, but I didn't know that I felt really lost until I started really struggling. I grew up in an sort of an idyllic childhood. My parents were educators. My dad was a coach. There were high expectations. It was a very high achieving, high standards family. We lived in the Bible Belt, so we were very strong Christian family. We were in church every time the doors opened, so everything looked perfect from the outside. And like I said, athletics were really important. Academics were really important. And we just knew what the expectation was for us to achieve. And so, my dad, as a small town high school football coach in Georgia, he was kind of, like a god, sort of like a preacher's kid. My mom was a teacher. And so, my parents, we were all there together at school every day. And my mom had been she is the daughter of a naval officer. And so had that strong discipline, very strong drive. And she had given up some dreams of her own to be a mom, which she wanted to be, and to let my dad, his career came first. And so she threw all of her energy into raising my brother and I. And the way that she did that, she loved us dearly. And she was an incredible teacher. And she taught us all kinds of things and made sure we had incredible experiences in life. But there was a lot of pressure in that. And so our family it felt like we were on stage all the time. And my brother was the idealistic kind of hero of the family. And he was the quarterback and, Mr. Perfect, and everything seemed to come easy for him. And here I was, everybody had it all together and was just doing everything that they were supposed to be doing. And except for me, I always felt like I was a mess. I felt like I didn't know where I belonged. I felt like I didn't fit anywhere. I felt like an irritant to my brother. I felt like my mom didn't really, even though she loved me dearly and was very proud of me and was always, building me up too, her standards were so high, and her expectations, I learned very early on that I better not disappoint. And that in order to try to keep up with the Joneses per se, that I had to kind of push aside who I was and be who I was expected to be. Because who I was, I didn't realize at the time, I'm an intuitive, I'm an empath. I'm at home in nature and with animals, and I loved chocolate ice cream and Cheetos, and here I was supposed to be a star athlete and a star student and be so driven and rigid and structured, and that just wasn't my natural giftedness. My giftedness was different. And so I thought that I didn't understand why I felt the way that I did all the time, and why I just wanted to be loved and accepted. And I wanted to be free to be who I was, and didn't understand why I couldn't do that. And so all of these messages that I now help people understand their own messages that they received about themselves as we go along in life, all of these messages began to take shape of, you're not enough. Who you are is bad. Your heart is wrong. You're just flawed inherently. And that you've got to always be someone else in order to make other people happy. And what I did learn that I could do was I could peacemake, I could people please, and I could perform. And so I got really good at those three things. And I figured out what was going to make my mom happy. I figured out what was going to make it look like our family was as what everybody needed us to be, and make everybody else happy in doing so. And so, of course, my heart was kind of shut down and trampled over in the midst of that, but I didn't understand that. But I became machinistic, if that's not even a word, but it feels like a word. It's a good word to me, because that's the way it felt. I was machinistic. I began to, train at athletically at levels that like no one else did. I pushed myself incredibly hard to excel and achieve. I studied and to have the grades that I was supposed to have, and to achieve the academic honors that I was supposed to achieve, and ended up by my high school year, to kind of make a long story short, by my high school year, I was and I was nice to everybody. And it wasn't a disingenuous nice. It was I really cared about people, because that was my heart. And so I was always the one to help everybody. I was always the one, taking kids home after practice who didn't have rides, and making sure everybody got something to eat if they didn't have it, or making sure that they needed help with their studies, if, that they got it if they needed it, those kinds of things. That was just my heart. Well, that's exhausting though. And by the time I mean, are you not exhausted already? I mean, so here I was, I guess it would appear that I became a very powerful warrior in my own right. But what I realized, it was a counterfeit warrior, because it was out of a masculine energy. It was out of a striving and struggling and surviving kind of energy, rather than a soft, feminine, receiving, feeling loved and knowing that I'm enough, living from my significance kind of energy. And so I was very, very successful. So by the time I was a senior in high school, I had a college scholarship to the school of my dreams. I was the homecoming queen. I was the valedictorian. I was the female athlete in the state of the year in the state of Georgia. I was the president of the Fellowship of Christian Athletes. I was the captain of all three of my sports teams. And I don't say that to brag. I say that because that's sad, because there was no life in that. I mean, it was wonderful to have achieved all of those things, but it was at the expense of who I was and my happiness, because where that ended was in debilitating anxiety, depression, an eating disorder that almost took my life, and just this awful nothing is ever enough comparison, feeling of competitiveness, that I always had to perform at a certain level, and I was lonely. And there was this incredible breakdown, and relationships. I mean, even though people loved me and I loved them genuinely, I didn't know how to connect. Can't compete and compare and connect at the same time. So I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't know how to let people love me, and how to share, to be enjoyed, and how to live. I was performing, and at a very great cost. So on where on through college, it became a very, as the pressure, as as the ante was upped, the pressure was greater. I went to a very prestigious school, and academically, and the level of competition in athletics was even greater. So it got to the point where I just couldn't continue anymore with the anxiety, the depression, and the eating disorder. And I ended up breaking down, and I had a mental, emotional breakdown, physical too, and had to go into a treatment center for 90 days. And so, college, at that point, everything came crashing down. It was, I'm just a failure, see, it's exposed now that really underneath, I really am screwed up. I really am just not, I don't have what it takes, which was the lie that I had believed all those years. And so it was this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so coming out of that, I got into some intensive counseling. My family got into counseling. This is being the identified patient in my family. Actually, I'm grateful that my parents were very loving, and they were willing to own their part in it, and were willing to really see, okay, wait a minute, what is really going on here? This is, what happened to our daughter? And they were willing to take a look at themselves. And so we all, over the next 10 years, went through a very intensive counseling process, individually and family, which not many families can say. I mean, it was, I am so grateful for those years that they could own their part. But, even as much as you work on yourself, those patterns of thinking and behaving to survive don't go away quickly. And I'm trying to get through as many parts of this as I can to fill you into, like, okay, how do we get to where we are now? So I did realize along the way in my counseling that I did have this counterfeit warrior that actually, I used to call her, I kind of named her because she had allowed me to survive. She was a persona that I had created within me. I'm not schizophrenic or have DID or anything like that, but it was this persona that allowed me to achieve what I needed to achieve and to be who I needed to be. And she was very strong. She was fierce. She was driven. She was strong, but, I would deploy her when I needed her, but she wasn't authentically who I was. And so that stole from me in life a lot. And so over the next 10 years, as I went through counseling and I began to heal and began to find out who I am really and what happened, because that was a scary time for me. And kind of figure out, okay, how am I wired inherently? And what am I created? What am I here for? As I began to do that work, I began to be called into counseling myself and realize that my heart is actually my superpower, and it's my intuition that is my greatest gift. And that's what I was struggling with all along, was trying to shut the very thing that made me who I was in my greatest giftings, was the very thing I was trying to shut down for years and years and years to try to be somebody else. And so I began to embrace that in me. And I began to recognize that this protector self, this strong Connie, counterfeit warrior, now that I call her, was not at all helping me. She was trying to kill me. She was destroying me rather than helping me. So it was this, and I write about this in my book, that this whole process of, okay, what do I do with her? Because I've needed her for so long. She drives me. She motivates me. I do love this fierceness and this drivenness about me. It's helped me to achieve and be successful in life. Yet at this point, I want me, you know, I mean, I began to really crave my own heart and letting that out in the world. And as I began to do that, I began to help, as I began to heal, I began to help others understand how they're inherently wired and what they're here for and what's keeping them in the struggling, striving, and surviving, the bondage of their existence, rather than the life that they were created for, so that they can live bravely, freely, and authentically in who they're created to be. Yet the counseling that I did, I only knew how to do it one way. I'd only known how to, I didn't understand at that point how to live in rest and how to live in a state of receiving and relax in who I am. I only knew how to drive. So even though it switched over to this, all right, I'm in my purpose now and helping others do this, and I've learned how to love myself more, I only knew how to work one way. And so throughout, I'm really fast forwarding now, but over the years of counseling, 15 years or so of counseling that I was doing, you know, I was helping everybody else with themselves and their lives, and, you know, helping them get the breakthrough in their hearts and their lives that I knew I was meant to do. Yet I wasn't living much of my own life yet myself, because I still didn't understand how to have great relationships. I still didn't understand how to be loved. I still didn't understand how to play and to enjoy life, and I still had a scarcity mindset about money and struggle, and that everything was going to always be a struggle. And so I just thought that I was here to help everybody else, and that everybody else got to have this great life. You know, that's kind of my my burden to bear, or whatever. As silly as it sounds now to me, it's like, that's what I really believed at some level. And that worked for me. And I got a lot of satisfaction and a lot of fulfillment out of helping people, until it came at my own expense. And at 39, I had yet another breakdown, mental, emotionally. I know that I ended up in early menopause at 39 with no children, never married. I ended up in adrenal failure. I had a thyroid, hypothyroid that was, you know, perpetuating the whole cycle of adrenal failure and hormones. And I was sick all of the time. I had no energy. I was, you know, chronically fatigued, and just wasn't myself. And so had a real pivotal moment there, where I just I really threw up my hands, and I wrote an angry letter to God, and I said, I am, you know, I'm sick of this. You know, is this some kind of sick joke? You know, that this is my life, or am I being punished? And I thought that, you know, here I'm trying to do what I feel like is my purpose. You know, I'm trying to love people well, but like, this is no life. This life that you supposedly, that the universe, and that you've created the universe to support me into this abundant life with this freedom and fulfillment. Like, where is that? Because this does not feel like, it feels more like a prison of an existence more than a life living fully alive. And I began to really begin to ask him about that, and really begin to surrender at a level that I hadn't before. And I started over the next, that was 9 years ago. And now, and over the last 9 years, I have read everything I could get my hands on and studied everything I could find on how to break free and really live in my design and live in not just in my purpose in doing for others, but how do you do the undoing? How do you live in the undoing where you're not struggling, striving, surviving? You're really living and living out of your free, authentic self. And I believed that, or came to understand that when we live out of that place is where true abundance and fulfillment resides. And it's kind of like we open up ourselves to receive all that is for us. And until we understand that, we're blocking everything that is intended for us. And so no wonder I was so frustrated. No wonder I felt like I was being punished. I was punishing myself and had no idea that any of that was going on. So I started, the other thing that I did was I hired a coach, I hired a life coach, and who helped me with my business also. And over the last 9 years have completely transitioned and transformed my life and my business to do what I really want to be doing, which is coaching. I do some counseling. I do a combination of counseling and coaching with people now, and living the way that I want to live, which is in an abiding, resting place, or learning to receive, learning to enjoy and play and do the things that are authentically fun and enjoyable to me, make time to take care of me, and be able to help others in the process. But that balance that I've never had before, that, is not perfection. It's just, it's an ebb and flow of a balance that is living out of that flow place every day is incredible. It's so different.
So I just know that the listeners right now, especially at this point, are thinking, I want that. How do I do that? I mean, because a lot of times we hear these, live authentically and find that balance and do this, and it sounds great. But
Yes.
Do you have, because it is, and it's a great way of living your life and having a full and abundant life. But
Yes.
How do you go about it for somebody who is really right now maybe in the struggle? And I think, especially because of, 2020, year from hell, and even
Oh,
2020. Yeah, and 2021 hasn't started out like so great either. So I think it's really difficult for people to try and, it's like, yes, this is what I want, but what are some first steps? So start with the spirit of the warrior, always taking that first step to a better life.
Yes. Well, that spirit of that warrior has to awaken within. And so it is an awakening that has to happen. We are living, most of us in society, and this is not condemning anyone. This is just what society, it's easy to do. We get in duty, obligation, responsibility, burden, and we learn to live in these strategies and these formulas of life, and we become success driven rather than passion fueled. And so the first thing we do is to disconnect from our heart and from the center of who we are. And so the first thing I do with people is I help them get quiet, and I help them, well, first of all, we've got to make a decision. We've got to first recognize where we are and the reality of that. And when we become aware of that and recognize that, all right, I've been living and struggling, striving, and surviving. I'm not going to stay there. I'm going to do whatever it takes to come out of that. And I'm going to ask for help in that, because it's too hard to do on your own. If you knew how to do something different, you would be doing something different already. So just like me, I was a therapist. I mean, my gosh, I should have had it all figured out. And I didn't. I needed help. And it is okay to ask for help. And so, and that's what I do now, is I coach people who have that high achieving, driven, mentality, who've lived in performance and achievement and bondage all of their lives. And they're at this point, they're asking themselves in those quiet moments, is this really all there is? Is this really it? And I can honestly say, I used to ask myself the same question, and the answer is no. There is more. But the place, we're not going to find it outside of us. We're going to find it inside of us. And it starts with reconnecting back to our heart. And in order to do that, and that it takes someone who knows how to help you do that to do that. And it's about getting quiet and still and letting the truth of who you are emerge from you. And oftentimes you don't even know for months, or for weeks, for days, whatever, because you're so disconnected from it. But that's what I do, is I help people come back to, maybe for the first time, connect to the heart of who they are. And I have a whole process called, it's a program that I take people through that's called Your True Essence. And it's helping people identify what their strengths are, what their giftings are, what their passions are. Because, we don't live driven or fueled by our passions anymore. We forget what we're passionate about. And so I help people. I have a series of exercises where I help people get connected to their passions again, and see all of the threads of passion in their life, and how those have been there, and how they're interwoven, and how the strengths, the purpose, the strengths, the passions, and the gifts align into their purpose. And so I help people really understand who they are, how they want to show up every day, how they want to be living, and what that looks like, and then help them create a dream to action plan that looks exactly, that is congruent with what's most important to them in their heart. And it also requires doing some inner healing work and some deeper work to understand what are the things that you're holding on to and being burdened by that are keeping you way down. And what expectations and shoulds and supposed tos are you living up to that are running your life? And what do you instead need to be saying no to so you can say yes to you? And it's just working through that process with people, helping them come back home inside of themselves and let that warrior awaken. And then that warrior arises into its true essence and its destiny.
I found it fascinating that you used that word bondage as you were talking about the heart in the center of who we are. And I just had this vision of a heart actually kind of like almost being bound in chains or whatever. And, that just does explain too why there is so much disease and illness. You made yourself sick.
I did make myself sick.
Yeah. And how many people are doing that and don't even realize it, that it could be as simple as trying to, find your way and live up to what, your gifts. I keep going back to that nature lover and the animal lover, and, you're intuitive and you're empathetic, and in the kind of family structure that you had was so completely different. And I was thinking that even the Connie Warrior or anti-warrior?
Strong Connie, the Counterfeit Warrior. Yeah.
Well, your Counterfeit Warrior was almost kind of like the alter ego. It's like, if I could get this done and get all this out of the way, then I can go outside. I can play. I can be with my animals. I can be in nature. It was almost like she was trying to get you there in some crazy sort of way. But I just feel like that if people would be able to understand how much that is hurting them health-wise, physically, mentally, emotionally, but also impacting physical health, because it's the cause of so much illness and disease.
That's exactly right. And that goes into a lot of what you do and that's where we are, so kindred in we are making ourselves sick by not being ourselves, by living. If we are not living our truth, our body, our mind, and our spirit are in dis-ease, just like you said. And dis-ease creates disease. And so it's, the way that we were created and wired to live is as our authentic selves. But how many of us can truly say we're really living our truth?
Mm-hmm.
We're really living the life that we are designed for. Most of us are existing in some life of bondage or duty or obligation or expectation. It's not ever, it's always a journey of becoming. I say it's never this destination that you reach where you've got it all figured out. You're always becoming more of yourself, and you're learning more about yourself, and you're growing and developing and morphing into who you are and what is congruent to you. But are we on that journey?
Mm-hmm.
Or are we just settling for an existence?
Mm-hmm.
And if we are, we can make it for only so long. But at some point, our body will break down.
Mm-hmm.
And now sometimes it's our mind that breaks down and we have anxiety and depression. Sometimes it's our body that breaks down and we have chronic fatigue, or we start to have, chronic UTIs or chronic sinus infections or chronic other, gastrointestinal problems, or we have adrenal fatigue or thyroid problems or whatever, however it manifests in our body. That is our body's alarm system to tell us, hey, I'm not okay. I'm not okay. And we can ignore it for only so long. And at some point, we're going to have to face the truth. The good news in that is that we haven't failed. That's our body bringing us back to our truth and saying, we just need to adjust some things here because we want to be better and we want to heal and we want to be whole. Our bodies and our minds and our spirits want to be whole. And they will not live a lie without some breakdown.
But it's sad because I think sometimes when you start to people feel some of those symptoms coming on that are caused by not living your authentic self or living, the way you were intended to live, and going against what your heart and your soul and your spirit is really telling you, it's the first thing they do is go to the doctor. This is the problem, so here are the medications. So you're actually compounding the problem by covering it up instead of going to the core root of what the problem is. I mean, it's always good to have that opinion of, okay, this isn't something that's really serious medically. Here's some medication to help get you through it. But there's other ways of looking at this that you can take yourself to optimal health.
That's exactly right. And that's where I went three places. Well, I'll say 4 places. Well, mind, body, spirit, and community. So the first, my mind, I had to look at what were the mindsets, what were the things that I was believing that were keeping me in struggle, striving, and surviving, that were keeping me living in fear, that were keeping me living lies. And I had to really do some reprogramming and renewing of my mind. And it takes discipline to do that. And I had to go at that hard and still do. I have a regimen every day that I renew my mind in and reprogram. Secondly, spirit. I had to really take a look at where was the breakdown in where was I not connected because I was living a lie. Thirdly, I had to look at the physical, and I went to a functional medicine doctor where they didn't put me on a lot of medicine. They were they got to the root of the problem. And at the same time, I was doing the mental and spiritual work with a counselor and a coach and a spiritual director or a mentor that helped me work all of that out so that I could live in congruency with all 3 of those areas of my life. And then I needed support, and I needed people loving me in that, and community. And so, yes, that's exactly, we want to throw something at it like medicine, or, well, I'll just, I'll do something drastic, or I'll do something to just keep covering it up. And it's not going to go away until we get to the source.
So what is life like? And I wasn't expecting to ask you this question, but it just kind of popped up because I'm really curious. What is a day in the life of Connie like now?
Yeah, well, And there's still responsibilities, and I do grieve the fact that, I'll just say this, I do grieve the fact that a lot of days, I think creatives, I talk to creatives a lot, and healers and intuitives. And I think there's a part of us that, we don't, the way that the world functions, the way that the world works with schedules and having to make a living, there is some of that doesn't really, I'm not going to say that it never takes a toll on me, because it does. I still have to make a living. So maybe I wouldn't, maybe I wish there was some days I wish I could, kind of live in nature and live in the woods and just kind of do whatever I feel like doing. I do that more often, but I still have to, as I still have to make a living in this world. And so, but what I do is I fuel myself in the ways that fuel my heart and that fuel my body and fuel my mind and my spirit. So I'm an early riser. I just happen to, I wouldn't tell everybody to do that. If you are naturally not an early riser, don't try to make yourself do that. I just am. Listen to your body's rhythm and listen to what your body needs. But I love to get up early. I absolutely cannot, I will not have a great day if I don't do some movement and kind of like flow work, a little bit of, if I do yoga or if I do some stretching, just light body, kind of connecting with myself, connecting with my heart. I do, a little bit of quiet time, whether it's a reading or it's some energy work or, spending time out in nature, prayer, whatever that is, whatever I feel that I need in those moments. I do a little bit of my affirmations, speak my affirmations to train my mind every morning. And then it's pretty much off to work. So either I'm seeing clients throughout the day or having meetings, or I'm creating something, writing, whatever it is that day. And I structure my schedule around, I know how much I can handle now. I know what is too much. And when I start to get that feeling of being irritable and dry and like feel like my soul's dying inside and I'm existing. And when I feel that way, I pull back. And I know that, okay, I've got to breathe. I've got to do something that breathes life into me. I schedule time in nature to refuel, to fuel intentionally. I play. I'm a CrossFitter, so I go to my CrossFit classes 4 times a week. I have a community within my CrossFit that I love. I take care of myself. I meal plan. I take my meals and I fuel myself, and listen to what my body wants, and needs, not just, what somebody's telling me I should eat or just grabbing something that's not good for me. But that takes time. It takes time and it takes effort. And it is about living intentionally and learning to connect to and listen to your body and your heart at all moments of the day. And it sounds like, oh my gosh, that's exhausting. What's exhausting is not doing that. Once you learn to reconnect to your body and your spirit, and you really hear yourself and you know what you need, it's this flow of intuition that tells you exactly what you need to be doing, that is going to make you allow you to live fully alive, rather than this existence that feels stifling and like you live in a cage.
So how can people get a hold of you? How can they find you, and where can they find you?
Yeah, well, I have there's the website for my practice, which is arisecounselingandcoaching.com. And it's Arise, ARISE, counseling and coaching, all spelled out.com. And that's our website. They're actually, now I run or own a practice of 7. There's 7 of us. No, there's 8 of us as of this week. 8 of us that are all different kinds of coaches and therapists. And so grateful to be able to lead that practice and be able to offer services to people of any kind you can imagine. Now I do more of the coaching, I'll do a combination of counseling and coaching to really help people break free. whatever is keeping them in bondage, whatever is like not working for them in their life. If they want to live at the next level of success and they feel like they can't get there, they're not satisfied with what the life they're living. That's the kind of work I love doing. But the other therapists do different kinds of work, and it's fun to have a team. And so you can always find me on my website. I am on social media on Facebook and Instagram. My Instagram is Connie Jones Coach. My Facebook is just Connie Jones, and I'm in Peachtree City, Georgia. So you can look for me there, or LinkedIn. And then, they can reach me on my cell or my email if you want me to give those.
Go for it. If you're okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. It's Connie, ConnieJ, Connie J at arisecounselingandcoaching.com is my email. And then my cell is 770-862-6088. And all of that's on the website anyway. So they can find that there.
So then I just have got to ask you before we sign off, do you have you've given us so much wonderful information already, but do you have maybe just a few more pearls of wisdom that you want to leave with the audience before we sign off so they have something to think about, going forward?
The other thing that comes along with performance and achievement and people pleasing is comparison. And, we women especially struggle with that so much. And I did too. It's been a real battle for me. And so my favorite quote is Brene Brown's, you either walk inside your story and you own it, or you stand outside of your story and you hustle for your worthiness. And I see so many people still standing outside of their story and hustling for their worthiness. And I am so passionate about helping people own their story, because I realize now that, I didn't want my story. I wanted everybody else's story. I thought everybody else's story was so much better than mine. And I had a picture of what my story was supposed to look like. And I felt punished because my story didn't look like that. And now I understand that God wrote a much more beautiful story than I could ever write for myself, because he wired me a certain way. And the universe supports me and gives me everything that I need in order to be me, the best me, and live my best life when I'm being me and walking in my story. But when I'm fighting myself and I'm fighting my story is when things when I'm in struggle, and when things feel really hard and cruel and scarce, and all of those things that oppose the energy of abundance and freedom. And so that's one of the things I can't reiterate enough just how important we are. Either, breathing is not living. And if we're just breathing every day, then we're dying a slow death. And I grieve when I see people dying a slow death, instead of really living fully alive. And we were not created to struggle, strive, and survive. We were created to thrive and live fully alive. And I just want to encourage everybody and challenge everybody out there listening to just decide today that you're going to just stop tolerating merely breathing and existing in your own life, and that you really want to close the gap between the dream that you have in your heart and the reality that you're living, because it can be done. And it's okay to ask for help and somebody to walk beside you in doing that and helping you find that for yourself. What you want won't leave you alone. That little voice inside is not going away because it's not supposed to. You're not wrong for the way you feel. You just need to start listening and acting upon it. And that will lead you to the life, to the promised land, I say, to the life that you were created for.
Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful. And I just want to remind everybody to check out your book. So it's on Amazon. Is that right?
It is on Amazon, yes. And actually I have a book website too, that's warriororise.com. And then it absolutely is on Amazon. You can just simply search on Amazon for Warrior Arise, and you'll see the book come up. And I hope it inspires you. I hope it offers you hope. And I hope it gives you, it empowers you to live bravely, freely, and authentically you in the life that you were created for.
Excellent. Connie, thank you so much for being with us today. I really appreciate it. You are just amazing. So thank you.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. And thanks, guys, for letting me share and for embracing, your own story in your own life, and for embracing me today.
Oh, wonderful. Again, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
And everyone, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you as well. And make sure that you do check out Connie's website. Make sure you check out her book. Obviously, she is an amazing person. She's got a lot to share with us and a lot to say. And remember to break those ties that bind you and bind up your heart, because you want to be able to live the life that you deserve and you were meant to live. So remember to own your story, take charge of your life, find that warrior spirit, whatever it means to you, and just let it rip. So that is the way of the Femininja. And that's a wrap on another episode of the Femininja Project. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, be safe, be strong, and until next time, bye now.